Hello, dear Amol, and we are starting with the corporate governance, the board of directors, and the standing committee. This covers an understanding of the meaning of the corporate governance and the role of the board of directors in establishing and maintaining a good standard of governance. This requires and refers to the separation of ownership and controls, the role of non-executive directors and the two standing committee, commonly referred as public company. The article also provides an introduction to corporate governance and some of the basic concepts that underpin it, and explain the role of the board, the different types of company directors, and the standing committee. Starting with the meaning. This is the area which requires a proper governance, and it stated that a system and the company that directed and controls the company. Though simplistic, this definition provides an understanding of the nature of corporate governance and the vital role of the leaders of the organization have to play in establishing effective practices. For most companies, those leaders are the directors who require and decide the long-term strategy of the company in order to serve the basic and best interest of the owners, that is the members, and the stakeholders, that is shareholders, and also of the customers, suppliers, providers of long-term finance, debtors, community, and the regulators. It is important to recognize the effective of corporate governance relies to extent on the compliance with laws, but being fully compliant does not necessarily mean that a company is adopting sound corporate governance practices. Significantly, it is published in UK shortly after the collapse of the Maxwell Communication plc, a large publishing company. Many of the actions that brought about the collapse, such as the concentration of power in the hand of one individual and the company borrowing from its pension fund in order to achieve leverage growth, were legal at the time. The Organization for Economics and Corporation Development published the principles of corporate governance, such as right of the shareholders, equitable treatment, stakeholders, disclosure and transparency, board of directors. Moving with the starting right of shareholders. The corporate governance framework should protect the shareholders and facilitate their right in the company. Companies should generate investment returns for its risk capital put on by the shareholders. Second, fair and equal. All shareholders and stakeholders should be treated equally, including those of the constitute majority and the foreign shareholders. Minority. Shareholders should have redress when their rights are contravened, or where the individual shareholders or a group of shareholders is oppressed by the majority. Stakeholders. The corporate governance framework should recognize the legal right of the stakeholders and facilitate cooperation with them in order to create wealth, employment, sustainable enterprises. Disclosure and transparency. Well, the company should make relevant timely disclosures on the matters affecting the financial performance management and the ownership of the business. Board of Directors. Well, this board of directors should set the direction of the company and monitor the management in order that the company will achieve its objectives. The corporate governance framework should also underpin the board accountability to the company and the members. Now, moving with the relevance of this corporate governance, this is applicable to both all the companies, like public company, small, listed companies, so on, and is important in all the smallest organizations. Limited companies have a publicity and responsibility to the shareholders, but also to other stakeholders described above. Not-for-profit organizations must also be directed and controlled appropriately, as the decisions and the actions of full individuals can affect many individuals, group, and the organization that have little or no influence over them. Public sector organizations have a duty to serve the state but must act in the manner that treats stakeholders fairly. Most of the attention given to the corporate governance is directed towards the public company, which securities are traded on the recognized capital market. The reason for this is that such organizations have many stakeholders, shareholders, those wealth and income can be enhanced or compromised by the decision of the senior management. This is often referred to as agency problem. Potential and existing shareholders take investment decision based on the information that is historical and subjective, usually with the little knowledge of the direction of the company will take it in future. They refer to place trust in those take that decision to achieve the right balance between the return and the risk, to put appropriate system of control in place, to provide timely and accurate information to manage risk wisely, and to act ethically at times. The agency problem becomes most evident when companies fail in order to put profit in necessary to take risk, and sometimes risks are taken with the best intention and are supported by the most robust business plan, result in loss or even the demise of the company. Sometimes corporate failure is brought about by inappropriate behavior of directors and other senior managers. As already mentioned, in the UK, corporate governance first come into the spotlight with the publication of the Cadbury report shortly after two large companies collapsed. The recent credit crisis had also about to renew the concern about the corporate governance, specifically in the financial sector. Although the roots of the crisis were mainly financial and originated with adverse conditions in the wholesale money market, subsequently investigation and reports have called into action and questioned the policies, processes, prevailing culture in many banking and finance related organizations. Approaches to the corporate governance. Well, main approaches are principle-based approach and the rule-based approach. Most countries adopt a principle-based approach to corporate governance. This involves establishing a comprehensive set of best practices to which listed companies should adhere. If it is considered to be in the best interest of the company not to follow one or more of the standards, the company should disclose this to shareholders, along with the reasons for not doing so. This does not necessarily mean that principle-based approach is soft option. However, as it may be conditioned to members of the stock exchange that companies strictly follow the comply or explain requirement. Some countries prefer a rule-based approach, those which desired corporate governance standards are enriched in law and are therefore mandatory. The best example of this is the US, where Sarbanes-Oxley Act down detailed legal requirement. Moving with the board of directors role. Nearly all companies are managed by the board of directors, appointed or elected by the shareholders to run the company on their behalf. In most countries, the directors are subjected to periodic, often annual re-election of the shareholders by the shareholders. This would appear to give the shareholders ultimate power, but in most sectors it is recognized that performance can only be judged over the medium to long term. Shareholders therefore have to place trust in those who act on their behalf. It is rare but not unknown to the shareholders to lose patience with the board of directors and remove its members. The role of the board of directors was summarized as follows: to define the purpose of the company, to define the values by which the company will perform its detailed daily duties, to identify the stakeholders relevant to company, to develop the strategies combine this factor, to ensure implementation of this strategy. The purpose and values of the company are often set down in the constitutional documents reflecting in the objectives of its founder. However, in some instances, appropriate for the board to consider whether it is in the best interest of this served by the company, to modify this or even change it completely. As cash register will quickly become obsolete with the emergence of microchip technology, the company had to adapt very rapidly. And this way, some of the corporate governance had benefited. The structure of the board of directors. Well, there are some executive directors and non-executive directors. Sometimes the board is unitary, sometimes it is two-tier board, and the key position. There is no convenient formula for defining how many directors a company should have, though in some jurisdiction company law specifies the minimum or maximum number of directors for different types of company. The board of directors is made of executive directors and non-executive directors. Executive directors are full-time employees of the company and therefore have the relationship and set of duties. They work for the company in a senior capacity, usually concerned with the policy matters or functional business areas of major strategic importance. Large companies tend to have executive directors responsible for finances, IT, information systems, marketing, so on. Executive directors are usually recruited by the board of directors. They are the highest earners in the company, with the remuneration packages made up of basic and other benefits and performance related pay. Most large companies now engage their executive directors under fixed term contract, often rolling over every 12 months. The chief executive officer and the finance director are nearly always executive directors. Moving with the non-executive directors. They are employees of the company and are not allowed in day-to-day running of the business. They usually have the full-time jobs elsewhere or may sometimes be prominent individuals from public life. The non-executive directors usually receive a flat fee for their services and are engaged under the contract for services. Now moving with the non-executive directors. Non-executive directors provide a balancing influence and help to minimize conflict of interest. They contribute the strategic plan, scrutinize the performance of the executive directors to provide external perspective on risk management, to deal with the people issues such as the future shape of the board and resolution of the conflict. The majority of non-executive directors should be independent. Factors be considered in assessing their independence include their business, financial and other commitments, other shareholders and directors and involvement in decisions, business connected with the company. However, holding shares in the company does not necessarily compromise independence. Non-executive directors should have high ethical standards and act in integrity and probity. They should support the executive team and monitor its performance, conduct demonstration in willingness to listen, questions, debate and challenge. It is now recognized as a best practice that a public company should have more non-executive directors than executive directors. An individual may be accountable in law as shadow director. A shadow director is a person who controls the activities of the company or of one or more of its actual directors indirectly. For example, if a person who is unconnected with the company gives instruction to person who is director of the company, then the second person is an actual director while the first person is a shadow director. In some jurisdictions, shadow directors are recognized as being accountable in law as actual directors. unitary